Okay, shall I just start? Did we do any? Off we go. Okay. So good morning. I enjoyed this chapter quite a bit. I really appreciate Dan and his putting so much into it. Wow, there's a lot of stuff. I could talk for a really long time before I want to try to cover a lot of these points he makes here. So I'll try to just highlight some. And I can't help but kind of translate the meanings into a language that speaks to, well, that helps me to understand it. I hope it helps you also. We'll see how that goes. But please, if I mention something that doesn't quite register with you, just let me know and I'll try to clarify it better. We'll see how that works. I may have said this before and I don't remember, that one of the last few times I talked to Mitch, we were talking about Dogen and Rupert Spira. And we started that punk rock Zen book, Don't Be a Jerk, anyway. And I was saying, Mitch, it's like reading Dogen and then trying to figure out what he means just isn't, there's other ways to practice that are better. And it seems kind of disconnected because Mitch was at that point was reading Rupert Spira every night. He just had a few months to live. And he was, really tuning in with his language. And he said, but no, it's not disconnected from Dogen's thought. And he pointed out to me the record of Transmitting the Light by Kazan. And Francis Cook, who was a well-known translator back in the early American days of Zen, translated the introduction to that. Now, Kazan was the third successor. I thought he was the direct successor from Dogen, but actually there was a couple guys in between, Eijo and Tetsu Gikai, and then Kazan came. And actually in Japan, Kazan was considered the great patriarch of Soto Zen, and Dogen was considered the high patriarch. But I was wondering, I don't know, possibly people got a clear understanding of Dogen's teaching from Kazan than they did from Dogen himself. At least that's my experience anyway. So I thought maybe that's something we might want to look at. We could, after we finish this book, we could look at that. If it's only about just look at that introduction and it might clarify some of the stuff that Dogen says. So getting back to the chapter here, he starts off talking about the wonder of sitting with everyone and how wonderful it is, and the awe and beyond all words. And my personal experience with that, it reminded me back of a time, some 20-some years ago. I was sitting around with some buddies who weren't necessarily meditators, I don't think. And we were out in the Florida sun talking, and somehow the subject came up of infinite space and how awesome it is and how amazing. How could it be possible that space just has no end and just goes on and on and on? And we sat around experiencing that for a few minutes, and then it just came up for me to say, yeah, how could it be that way? But how could it not be that way? So it was kind of like the ultimate double bind, it can't be that way and it can't not be that way. And so what that does, I think it really ties into how the wonder of it all, we say something's wonderful, it's full of wonder. How the wonder of it all, if we really contemplate it deeply, it kind of stops our thinking. It's like the mind can't go there. It can't comprehend how something cannot be, and also is at the same time. It can't be, but it is. So then the mind kind of is, at some point, the mind is forced to stop, and that opens the way. So that's the kind of an experiential way for me to see how sitting with the wonder of it all leads to the practice that we're doing. And that's very important, because one thing we do learn pretty early on, I think, at least intellectually and then experientially, is that our actual experience is the real test of reality, not our thinking and our ideas or our anticipations or our memories. And so it was interesting when he talked about how we don't remember. Oftentimes in Dharma talks, we don't remember what was said. And I thought that was very true, you know. There's some people I work with and, oh, were you at the session last night? No, what did they talk about, you know? And it's like, I don't know, it was just last night, I forget what they talked about, kind of thing. So it's interesting how that works, because I think, you know, when we're talking about the entire body being familiar, he mentions that one of Dogen's phrases in the beginning of the chapter, the entire body being familiar. Of course, he's not talking about the physical body. He's talking about something that includes the physical body, but is the body of reality, our body of true nature. And so the important part in the Dharma talk is to be listening and paying attention. And if the Dharma talk is skillful, or if the teacher is contemplating seriously this larger body and communicating and informed by this larger body, the nature of this larger body, then that's what's happening with the people here. And so not only the teacher, but the people aren't attaching to the thoughts that are going on. They're absorbing the Dharma body of each other and the teacher together. You know, we're all there. So we're all here absorbing. We might not have the best teacher in the world, but we're all absorbing the Dharma body, right? And so it's not so important whether it's okay to remember, like he says, but it's okay if we don't. One thing about this, when we talk about the Dharma body, more and more I see how Dogen was talking about being that's not stuck in the container of the physical body. So we have this phrase in our culture, like thinking outside the box. So my experience of Zen practice is maybe we start to think outside the box, like there's a possibility that what we actually are isn't confined in this container of self. So maybe we begin to contemplate that. And then maybe even if we close our eyes and realize the sensations that are there are still there when we open our eyes. And though we pay attention and experience the world through the faculties of our body, what actually knows our experience isn't limited by the physical body. The physical body is an image that appears within this Dharma body. So knowing that, I mean, just opening to that possibility, then we're sort of outside the box. We have experience of being outside the box. And then go deeper and deeper. Someone like Dogen has realized that there is no box. A lot of his poetry is saying there is no box, there is no container. It's just, we're just this awareness. It includes what we are, but reality is not inside or outside, but we're just a reflection. Our physical body and even our experience is made out of this Dharma body that's, in the nature of which is vast openness and unconditional acceptance of everything. So that's, to me, that's how just the contemplation of who or what we are leads to exploring the nature of that by which we know our experience. And that's, you know, Rupert talks about that. That's what's really lacking in our culture. We're in this dualistic bind where we ignore, we're not taught to explore the nature of that by which we know our experience. We're just, you know, we think that matter is something that's outside consciousness, that there's a world out here and we're addicted to this little ego inside. Well, it's always been that way for the vast, vast majority, of humankind. But another implication of this understanding, is I think it moves into what he's talking about, how there's no enlightenment that isn't actually put into practice and expressed. So in the Advaita non-dual traditions, one way they'll approach this understanding is to say, well, okay, look at our experience, be willing to explore the very texture of our experience, which Dan also says in this book we need to do. Thoughts arise and then they pass away. And so we know our thoughts, and we know we aren't limited to our thoughts, because as the thoughts arise and pass away, our awareness doesn't change. It's still here. And then we explore with feelings, sights and sounds. It's the same process. They arise and they pass away, but our awareness, that which knows our experience, remains the same. So this I, the thought I, is just another thought that arises and passes away, but what we actually are, remains and is independent, not bound by, doesn't share the limits of the thoughts or the feelings or the sights or the sounds. So there is no real distance between that which knows our experience and the experience itself. We are totally absorbed, just like when you look at a movie screen, the images on the screen, there's no distance between the images on the screen and the screen itself. And when we experience something, we're experiencing what it's made of, just like when we watch a movie, we experience the images on the screen, we're experiencing what the images are made of, which is the movie screen itself. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. So Thich Nhat Hanh, a teacher I studied with, not personally, but in a Thich Nhat Hanh group, he talks about the river of experience, like the mind of experience, or the life force that animates us, that lights us up, is like a river flowing, just the river of experience continually flowing. And there's that saying that you can never step in the same river twice. There's just this constant flowing going on and on and on. So another way of saying that is there is no, the actualization of practice and enlightenment is always just going on and on. It's just this flow with human experience. To me, that simplifies all this stuff. There's never been practice or enlightenment without the expounding of it and expressing of it. So it all comes down to, here we are, here and now. There's a short little dialogue from Nisargadatta, and some of you have indicated an interest in him, where he's with a student who says, I find my sadhana or meditation very difficult. And Nisargadatta says, the self is near, the big self, the capital S, is always near, and the way to it is easy. All you need to do is do nothing. Your meditation is just to be. The doing happens. There's another saying of his, the notion of doership is bondage. That's another talk, but the doing just happens. Just be watchful. Where's the difficulty in remembering that you are? You are all the time. So all you have to do is remember that you are. Now, when Nisargadatta says that, he's not saying remembering that you are. Is different than saying it's not remembering what you are, because we don't know who or what we are. So when we say I am, it's not I am this or I am that. it's that presence, that the awareness of being present, that is free of all thoughts, feelings, all conception. It's not describable or perceivable. And I was talking with, I might have mentioned this before, a friend of mine, John Sorrell. He recently passed away at 91. And we talked, in the last year of his life, we talk about remembering who he is. He'd make jokes about it because he was 90 years old, and he'd take out his wallet and say, yeah, I guess I'm still John, Roger, And he said, I forget that I'm old. I mean, I'm so old. It's like, when you don't remember so much, you're not clinging the thoughts about it, and you just are. You just are. Then, and my comment was, yeah, and we just are all the time. So not only is it easy to remember that you are, in fact, according to Nisargadatta, knowing that we are is the only thing we know. There's nothing else we know. The rest is just speculation, right? So not only are we all the time, we just are all the time. So we're always indescribable and non-perceivable as an object. So, and then the rest of the stuff he was talking about in the chapter reminded me of the freedom that comes from pursuing this practice to the end. Because once we're outside that box and we get the growing intuition that there is no box, there's the freedom of our true nature. Not necessarily, and then there's the bondage of the separate self versus the freedom of our true nature, which is the source of joy. And the freedom to help, to be open to others' suffering, to be able to embody the realization of oneness, compassion, experience others with the empathic, awareness and openness, the freedom to fully feel our own suffering and other suffering, to more fully feel, and to move through it, let it go, not resist that either, not resist suffering, but then have the freedom to express the joy, which is an important component in helping other people transform their suffering as well as our own. So the primary way, Reb Anderson talks about to do this is when you sit, don't grasp and don't turn away from experience. And be willing to have the courage to face what comes up when you're not grasping and not turning away. In other words, it's an effortless practice in a way, because all we do in that practice is just stop making the effort to grasp and stop making the effort to turn away, and then deal with all the conditioning that naturally arises from that. And the other point I wanted to make about the chapters, he goes into what is our responsibility, as a bodhisattva, to help others, be dedicated to the helping others be free from suffering. So years ago, when I went back into school and studied psychology, I learned pretty quickly, responsibility is the ability to respond. And being on this path for years, the ability to respond, I think, in the context of our practice, is the ability to respond from the heart of the meditation, that heart of the meditation on not grasping. You can explain what that meditation is in so many different words, but spirit of inquiry is one. From the heart of our spirit of inquiry, the heart of our compassion, the heart of our wisdom, the heart of our really wanting to be the heart of all beings and free all beings from suffering. So that takes courage, but it also, the practice gives us the freedom to face our fears and to be more deeply committed to the way. So I think that's enough for me, and we can discuss. Do you have questions, comments?
Thank you, Roger. It remind me of what Rupert says. We are meditation. It's not something that we do. And the screen doesn't get perturbed at all by any of the images that come across it. It's aware of them, aware of all the images, but the screen is still there. I mean, you watch a war movie, destruction, killing, doesn't affect the screen at all. It's just something that we are. And I think that if we can realize that, let everything go. What else can you do? In the final analysis, what else can you do? Screen's not going to jump off the stage and pursue the images. It just lets them go. And I mean, I think that's a wonderful analogy. And I keep coming up with that myself. You know, that I'm the screen. I'm the screen, and I'm also the images that are coming across the screen. So, you know, screw them. I mean, if they if they start to bother me, let them go. Yeah, you know, I think that's it. Thank you for your talk. That is,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Roger, for your talk. What came up for me in this chapter was the whole idea of not remembering, and just being, because from time to time I hear a Dharma talk or I read a book and I'm quite into it at the time, but then, you know, later I can't remember it. But as Leighton is saying here, I guess when you need it, you will have it. And I've listened to, you know, a number of Dharma talks, and I get it, I hear it at the time, but then later can't remember. And then the whole idea of not knowing, you know, we don't even know who we are, and being able to just be here with what is. Sometimes we feel we have to have words, we have to explain everything, you know, even in a relationship, we feel like, you know, sometimes we have to talk through things, and sometimes, you know, we just be, even without words. So I really appreciated that from the chapter and from your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Like you, I read the chapter again this morning, and I put down the book and I said to myself, that was one hell of a chapter. There is so much inside the chapter, and likewise, there is so much inside your talk. So I will try to maintain some type of thread as I go through it with that. First off, I mean, you're such a welcome addition to the group. Again, in many ways, it's so wonderful to have you be a part of this belonging Sangha, because I think your connection to Mitch, and you know, your sharing with Mitch, and you know, I don't know, the similarities and what we all read and think about and practice. I guess the first thing is this whole thing about practice, and it's kind of funny in some ways, because, you know, I'm not sure what it is that we're practicing, and do we really have to practice something that is so readily available to us? With that, it's kind of like, are you enlightened or not? And, you know, then are you going to have successive opening experiences with enlightenment? And to me, it's an on-off switch. You're either enlightened or you're not. That it's part of the practice, you know, in terms of if there is anything that is a practice, it's really I am. I mean, it really is that fundamental awareness that has always been with you, and that will always be a part of you. And I think exploring that dimension for me is, and that's stopping. For me, it's I was up in Acadia, riding bike, Acadia National Park in Maine yesterday, and riding a bike, and there were some vistas that are just, when they say spellbinding, it's like the thoughts stop. Everything just kind of shuts down, and you're there. And I think I am, and coming to that fund for me. What do they call it? The brilliant understanding. There's so many ways that people have referred to it. That it's just that with that, but recognizing at the same time that it's all a part of it. What we create in the screen, what we create in the images on the screen, it's all a part of it all. With that, and that we create it with that. That the piece in the chapter I really liked. I in many ways I think what you said, Claudette, always holds true for me too. I hear something, I forget it, and then I come across it again, or I pick up a book and start reading it again, and it's like I see something different, I hear something different, I feel something different, and I'm transported, or I transport myself to another understanding with that. And what I got from the book, I've always, in some ways kind of irritated by the Bodhisattva vow in terms of saving all sentient beings. And when I read the chapter again this morning, it was when I thought that, well, you're helping them save themselves, was basically what he was communicating there. And that was so, it's like, I don't need to save the world, but one of the things I can do is help people help themselves. I can still do my thing, in terms of being involved in social action and being involved in ecology, or being involved in whatever it is that I believe and do and practice, in terms of behaviors. But, it still comes down to that for me. And I think that's probably why I feel good about being a shrink for so many years and working with people and teaching for so many years, is that I helped other people help themselves and help them help other people. And there's something very satisfying about that, and reflecting, and it wasn't certainly helping people understand themselves in terms of Buddha nature or I am or anything in that regard. But I think being able to add that component to the time I have left, in terms of being able to help people understand themselves and to be able to work through those issues and to be able to understand and deal with their own problems, that they have in their lives is something that I can do that. The general call to save all sentient beings kind of left me hanging in many ways. And I realized that there's a direct path, so to speak, not the Rupert direct path, but in some ways the direct path of Rupert, in terms of being able to do all that. So before I ramble on even further, thank you for your talk.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, it's funny. I read the chapter yesterday, and I actually had a big satori last night. We have a monthly meeting. I live in an intentional community. It's permaculture. It's intentional. It's social justice. It's we're doing reparations for slavery. We're working to repair damage to the neighbor. It's the most conscious place you can imagine. So our meetings, as you can imagine, are terrible because everybody is perfectionistic. You said the wrong thing here. I'm he, she, it, not it's complicated. And I was thinking, I was in a meeting with all these people who are doing their best to do good, but overcomplicating things. I was thinking, and you mentioned Brooklyn earlier. I was raised in a bunch of row houses, and in my row house, there was no backyard. There was like a stoop in front of it. You got out on the stoop in the day, and I was on the third floor. It was the second, first floor. But by the time you get to the landing, there were already kids on the landing. By the time you get outside, there were other kids outside. There was like 20 kids, and some of them were not that nice. Some of them were like 18 in third grade, and they want my lunch money, And I was thinking yesterday, I was in a meeting with the hippies and their reparations, and they went to some people went to the gun justice thing. We take buses, we charter buses to Washington. We make sure people of all we gay people, black people on the bus, everything. I thought about my way growing up with those Irish toughs who were beating the shit out of everybody. That somehow it was all the same. I don't know if I'm communicating this, but somehow my experience with them was like pointing me as directly to reality as just these people I'm in my own village right now. And it was that my neighborhood bullies were showing me the way. It wasn't a great lesson, but they were showing me the way. And somehow the whole thing has been sort of this flow of experience. Somehow I connected in my mind, if you read the chapter, get my terror of trying to walk to school in the morning and walk home in one piece, you know. Forget about being a Jew or black. Anybody who walked in the streets was in danger. If you weren't like 18 in third grade, and those of us were 6 and 7, were big trouble. You know, there were people who have been left back 3 or 4 times. They were like starting to grow facial hair, you know, and they were mad. But anyway, so I was thinking as I was in the meeting yesterday, it was about, you know, we were involved in a reparations project. We were putting a lot of money into the black neighborhood in our town to make reparation for the damage that we've done for white privilege, etc. We're talking about that a lot. And as conscious as these people are, and as unconscious as the bullies were, somehow it's all a part of some continuum that I sort of saw yesterday after reading the chapter. That was all sort of, you know, flowing together in kind of in a weird way. Maybe like that movie screen where you have, you know. And I remember when I was going as a little kid to the movies, a big movie theater in my town, you'd have 2 or 3 cartoons, innocent cartoons, before the vicious Western came on. You know? You had Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. Then you have some John Wayne shooting somebody a minute later on the same screen. And maybe that's what the kind of thing I was thinking about, how it goes, you know. And it goes like that, and it flows like that, and that's our experience. And I was thinking that, you know, and by the way, I love Dogen. I'm a philosopher, so I love that abstract stuff. But I can imagine if you weren't trained in have a PhD in German philosophy, studied for years and years, reading Dogen for the first time, what do you do? What does a mere mortal do? It's like me. I'm not a mathematical guy. One of our guys who moved into our village, he has a PhD in discrete mathematics from Cambridge. He's retired. I don't know how to begin the conversation. I don't even mention it. You know, I wouldn't even know what to say. I feel so stupid. And I think that's what Dogen is for a lot of it. Just all this stuff is so abstract. At the same time, the simple message is, wherever you are, there's meditation. And this right here is enlightenment. And enlightenment is, Brooklyn is enlightenment. Well, I don't know about that, but it's, maybe overstated it. But that's it. So just, and again, this I'm usually not happy with the books. It's a very good book. I'm really enjoying it. But you're right. It's hard to give a talk in this book because it packs too much of these chapters. So you got to sort of select. So that's it. That's good. And again, Roger, to welcome you and just thank you for being here. It's a good addition. You know.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's comments. I mean, they're so great, and it's really reinforcing for me that the real power of the practice is also the recognition of our shared being. And it's nice that I can express myself and then have the other 4 of you, you're tuned in. That's not always the experience. And you get what I'm saying and you don't have to remember it. Like I won't remember most of it. I won't remember most of it, but we got it inside, you know, we got it in our being. So, yeah. So thank you. I had an interesting experience. We have a little bit of time. Yesterday morning, I finished another session and I walked into my kitchen. And, you know, I live way out in the boonies, so snakes were around. There was this big black snake, he was about 4 feet long, who had somehow shrunk him. He was able to, from underneath the house, come up through a vent, and he was on this big marble counter in my kitchen. You know, his tail was a Kleenex box, and he was wrapped around my car keys, and he was just sitting there. And my first thing was, you know, and scared the bejesus out of the snake. And so, then we were just sitting there staring at each other, and I'm like, okay, well, you're a sentient being, I'm a sentient being. We just sat there, but I don't know what to do. I'm sorry, Mr. Snake, but it's not okay for you to be in my house here, you know?
Mm-mm. Certainly not.
My neighbor named Pinky, he's an Appalachian farmer. He's been farming out here for like 60 years. He's 85 years old, you know? And he actually shot a rattlesnake on the property that's another story. But so he's the snake whisperer. So I call him up, So Pinky, there's this big black snake in my kitchen, what do I do? And he goes, well, you got a broom, just kind of put the broom on him, grab him behind the head, and take him outside. And it's no big deal, and I'm like, well, you want me to do it? And I go, well, yeah. So he gets in his little golf cart and he comes up the road, he comes in there and he's he's a little rickety and he gets the broom, gets the snake like this. It's all wrapped around his arm and he would go outside and he throws it about 100 feet in the air and because it's not a poisonous snake and they're good to have around because they kill the varmints and everything. And then that was that, and I was thinking like, wow, Zen Master Pinky, he's like, he did his job and, we talked a little bit and he was in mourning because his wife of 59 years had died of COVID, but he's doing all right. And he gets in his little thing and he drives back down the road. And I really appreciated him, I can't talk to him about Dogen, but hell, he helped me out. And he's kind of a bodhisattva.
I would say he knows all about Dogen better than us.
Yeah.
And in my hippie commune, we had a rat problem. The rats got into we had the big compost. The rats got into the compost. So we said, okay, let's trap and kill the rats. The hippies opposed it because the rats are sentient beings. I said, have you ever been to a city? Rats are sent, but they won't harm the rats. And so there it is.
I just want to make one comment. Tom, you said you're irritated with this saving all sentient beings. I think about it from the perspective of I'm all sentient beings. So if I save myself, then I'm saving all sentient beings. And I think what a world this would be if we were all happy and content and peaceful people. So if we worked on ourselves, then we in effect are saving all sentient beings. That's my little take on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that. I happened to watch an interview past couple of days with Michio Kaku. Or anybody familiar with him? He's a world-renowned,
New York City guy,
a physicist.
City College.
Yep. And he was talking about aliens, and he was saying that he believes that the government now is starting to admit that there are things out there that we have no idea what they are, where they're from, and he was saying that in all probability these aliens are from a type 3 civilization. We are about 100 years from being a type 1 civilization. We're not there yet. But the aliens are most likely from a type 3 civilization, which means that they are approximately at least 100,000 years ahead of where we are technologically. And the way he was describing some of how they would be and they would react to us, I don't know if I'd want to save them. So everything is relative. I doubt I would want to save those sentient beings after Michio Kaku described what they probably were like. And the other thing I wanted to say is Mitch used to say, I used to be, when I first started practicing and I would read some of Dogen or one of the other books that he would recommend, and I just didn't get it. I didn't understand. And he would say, don't worry about it. He said, sometimes I read Dogen. He said, I have no clue what he's saying. And then a year or two later, that's it. That's what he said. That's what he meant. So I don't worry about that stuff anymore. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We're all on schedule. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Roger, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Glad to be.
very glad. We ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Metta Sutra. May all beings be happy. May they be joyous and live in safety. All living beings, whether weak or strong, in high or middle or low realms of existence, small or great, visible or invisible, near or far, born or to be born. May all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, nor despise any being in any state. Let none by anger or hatred wish harm to another. Even as a mother, at the risk of her life, watches over and protects her only child, so with a boundless mind should one cherish all living things, suffusing love over the entire world, above, below, and all around, without limit, so let each cultivate an infinite goodwill toward the whole world. To all victims of war and violence and natural events, to the injured and to all families touched by these tragedies, to the healing of hatred in all countries and among all peoples, to the wisdom and compassion of our world leaders, to the peace of the world and the harmony of all beings. Let's sit for 20 minutes. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to transform them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Thank you. Well, Roger, I just wanted to say I fondly remember John Sorrell. He used to sit with us at Southern Palm over 20 years ago, but I'm always impressed with him. He was a very nice man.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Now he's really on me.
I rest my case. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
All right, thank
Brooklyn.
you. Take care, folks.
Yeah.